I've got to admit, I've been up and down like a yo-yo with this David Moyes stuff. Even just go back to last week when Tim Steidten did that interview that was sort of translated from German. It was transcribed, and he'd been saying that he'd initially come into West Ham with a ton of ambition. But in many respects, he suggested that him, David Sullivan, and David Moyes had all had a reality check. I think it was pretty much inferred that they were all going to have to make some sort of sacrifice in some way, shape or form. Three men who, of course, wanted to run the football club. None of them could. David Moyes couldn't really get his own way anymore. Tim Steidten couldn't just walk into a club and get all the power. And David Sullivan knew he couldn't really be the director of football, so had to certainly let a scouting team and manager have control of transfers. So he said there was a certain climb down. But I think he also alluded to the fact that he'd enjoyed working with David Moyes. Maybe he didn't say enjoyed, but there was enough there. There was enough meat on the bone to take that from it. He said he'd learnt a lot, that was it. And when I heard that, I thought, oh, hold on, maybe there's something here. Maybe, just maybe, he's laying the groundwork for next season that he's going to work more closely with Moyes. Now, I have believed for some time that David Moyes had, let's just put it this way, has been shown a contract, offered one, shown one, or given some form of indication of what next season's deal might look like were he to sign it, or were he to accept one, or were he to be offered one. I think they probably said, look, David, we are going to look at it, we're going to look at the end of the season, but it may well be slightly different. We want to sort of increase Tim's role in the club, want to sort of stream, they probably use a load of corporate words and probably spoke about streamlining and this, that and the other. And David Moyes, I think, possibly didn't like the look of what he saw because he wants to be the all-powerful, omnipotent manager. I believe that to be the case. But I still think, as of last week, my own mindset was I could be swayed that David Moyes was going to stay. I thought that was the way it was going to go. As of today, I'm very sure he's going. But as I say, I'm up and down like a yo-yo with this stuff, really. I think there's a lot pointing in that direction, but one of the biggest ones is almost not what anything or anyone says. It's just a little bit of common sense. It's a little bit of reading body language. It's just and a little bit of looking at the timing. The timing is almost too perfect not to get rid of him. And I don't wish to sit here overly slagging the man off. I don't. Because I do think he will look back, and others will look back at his time at West Ham as a successful one. I do think he has been a success. Have we enjoyed the football? Have we been frustrated? Well, I think ultimately there's been a lot of times we haven't enjoyed the football. There's been some games I have enjoyed actually, but have we had success? Of course we've had success. We've won a trophy. But I can't help but feel that it's probably run its course. And I think with him getting to the end of his contract, with the squad being as old as it is, I think with the number of players, not just an ageing squad, but the fact that people that like Ben Johnson, who are sort of in their mid-20s, the fact that like Lucas Paquetá, who's whatever he'll be when he leaves 27 or something like that, the fact that there are a number of those players who look to be on their way, Nathan Gerd as well, it's not just old players leaving and players running out of contracts. There's just going to be a whole new upheaval next season. And I've thought for a little while now, for me, it didn't make sense to ask him to go again. We talk about projects. I said I thought we'd seen his project. We've seen his project already. We've had it. He won a trophy. That's it. And now the team are at the end of its cycle. Are we going to ask him to go again? And I think, looking at him now, I don't think he's got the desire to do it again. As I say, the best time for him to go out was after the Conference League win. But I think there must have been a temptation to carry on and try and get European football again, and then try and win another European trophy. And both look sort of highly unlikely. I say about today, as I record this now, I checked earlier on, Chelsea were winning something like 4-0 against Everton at half-time. I think they've still got a couple of games in hand. They're 1 point behind us. Now, they've actually got some tough games in the running. But it's quite funny, actually, because I spoke yesterday about Alan Shearer saying, well, they're only 2 points off 6th. It doesn't feel like we're going to be 2 points off 6th for too much longer. I'm certainly, look, we'll deal with we're going to record the preview for Crystal Palace with Gio later on, or later on in the week, sorry, should I say. But, yeah, I mean, that is a fixture that worries me, particularly the way they played against Liverpool. Now, look at some of the other things that are pointing towards it as well. The fact that the club have sort of rebuffed a couple of suggestions that we might be looking to recruit Will Steele or Jose Mourinho. It wasn't a case of, no, we're keeping David Moyes. It was a case of, no, we don't want either of those two. Which, of course, if you're... That obviously the natural conclusion and the natural curiosity is to think, well, hold on, who are we going to get then? Who is on the list? I don't know. If I had to... I wouldn't put any money. I'm so uncertain, I wouldn't put any money on it. Not any big money. If I had to put tuppence on it, I'd still go with Fonseca. Perhaps Fonseca, Arne Slot would be another one as well. I still think one of those. I think those two have been identified by West Ham for a long time. Maybe that changed. Maybe Steidten's going to have some involvement in the role. I don't know. But I think you've got that. And then I think you've got the transfer stuff as well. And I don't mean the fact that the squad is going to need refreshing. When I say transfer stuff, I mean January was almost like the last hurrah, I felt, for the club, for David Moyes. And the fact that all we ended up with was a really expensive player in Calvin Phillips, who is unusable, I think was a really, really bad move. And that's with hindsight, by the way. That is hindsight. I thought and I hoped it would be a good transfer. It's not turned out to be, but it doesn't really matter what I think. Ultimately, it's not me that was responsible for spending millions and millions of the club's money. And I think if there was any doubt in the minds of the club as to whether or not they should allow David Moyes to spend again, I think that might have done it. I think there was certainly a situation earlier on, actually, funny enough, in the summer window when we absolutely could have got Harry Maguire. Harry Maguire, as I understand it, had agreed to join West Ham, but he was sticking his heels in about a £5 million loyalty payment from Manchester United. West Ham could have paid that. West Ham could have given Man United another $5 million on the transfer fee if we'd have really wanted, but I never felt there was, and it was leaked, I think, as well from the club, that there was never really a great desire to push that deal through. So it was they backed him a little bit with James Ward-Prowse, and I think there was scrutiny upon him. And I think it's almost impossible for anyone to make the case right at this moment. Things could turn around. We beat Leverkusen, we beat Crystal Palace. Honestly, everything's, you would say, hunky-dory again. You know, you really would. But as of this point right now, it is hard to make the case that David Moyes' decision to go with the small squad has worked. I really think it hasn't. I also think, I know this because I've been told it, that both Tim Steidten and Sullivan really tried to force the purchase of a striker and have been since the summer. So we tried to force a striker on David Moyes in the summer, replacement for Scamacca, who of course was a replacement for Sebastian Haller, and tried to do so again in the January window. David Moyes has got form for a lot of things, but one thing he has got form for is taking a very, very long time to buy a striker. There is no guarantee that he would get another forward in. There is every likelihood next season that he would just rely on Mikel Antonio again, and when Mikel Antonio wasn't fit, we'd play Jared Bowen there. Hey, maybe that would be all right, particularly if we haven't got European football, which, I mean, it's looking less and less likely, isn't it? Let's be fair, not just with our results, but with other people's results as well. And that's what we're relying on, ultimately, are other people to be more crap than we are. That's going to be hard. I mean, it is going to be hard, particularly if you look at Chelsea. They've had a bit of a basket case season. Got some top quality players there, haven't they? And we look knackered. Anyway, my point is, you look at how fatigued we are. You look at the lack of squad rotation. You look at the players coming in. Someone like Danny Ings, who just looked old. Did not look able to perform, but not for West Ham in the way we play, certainly. And you have to conclude that actually there was a bunch of players who looked either fatigued or like I'm not ever going to say not playing for the manager, because I don't think he's lost the dressing room. But I think you can still have the dressing room. I think you can still have respect to the players, but for them to really lose faith in your tactics. The stats were coming out thick and fast over the last couple of days. Obviously, I mentioned a statistic about us having the joint worst defence in the Premier League. There's loads of stats. I mean, there really are. There are loads and loads of statistics which suggest we are a soft touch. We're easy to play against, and we concede lots of chances against us. I mean, I said this a week ago, and I'm not going to be the first to have said it, and I said it before a week ago. But I said my phrase was, we have to have luck from VAR, we have to have a fortune with the referee, and a goalkeeper to have a truly outstanding game for us to get points. And that's true, because we invite so much pressure upon ourselves. And as I said, maybe that's part of the tactic. Maybe having two goalkeepers is part of David Moyes' tactic. But it's not a great one, and it's not great to watch, which brings me to the final reason why I think David Moyes is off next season. And that is the stadium, the lack of uptake in season tickets for next season would be the main issue there, and that's certainly something that's concerning the club. The number of empty seats there may be next season, and I've always maintained this. You know, this is one thing I do think a lot of the pundits get wrong. You know, the sort of be careful what you wish for mob. When they assess West Ham, they're assessing old West Ham. They're saying, well, what more do you want? You're up in 7th, you're up in 8th, you're near the top 6, you're in Europe. What more do you want? As if it's a question of actually, no, we don't want. That's not what we're saying. As I say, they reframe our argument to make us sound like imbeciles. Even really esteemed good journalists like Jeff Stelling. Jeff Stelling did it to Nicky Hawkins. He tried to do the whole binary thing. He tried to say, well, what do you want to do? Do you want to play good football or get relegated? Do you want to play defensive football or get relegated? I mean, it was for someone, and I like him. He's really good. Does loads for charity. I really like Jeff Stelling, but he went down. He went down to the lowest depths then to try and make his point, and he didn't make it because Nicky obviously countered him, and I think we're seeing an awful lot of that. And what they do is they reframe the argument. But of course, we're not West Ham. There's something to contextualise here, and that is that we've moved stadium and we've spent a lot of money. So you can put in the fact that, you know, we have a really big wage, but we did actually before we started stripping it out the last 2 or 3 seasons. But I still think we're about 8th, and I think that will go back up again. But we have spent a lot of money. We have spent, whatever it is. I often say 450 million. It's somewhere between 400 and 450 million, and that's during David Moyes' term. And I think that's something that is a big part of the argument, but the biggest thing is the stadium. West Ham have been asked to almost double their fan base. And look, West Ham have always had a really well supported. You'll always hear ex-players, when we do interviews with ex-players, they'll always tell a story of when they've been in Australia, Kathmandu, Canada, Vancouver Island, or Madagascar, somewhere on the other side of the world, and they'll run into West Ham fans. You've only got to look at how many people turned out on the streets when we did the bus parade for the Conference League. There's a lot of West Ham fans, but I'm talking match going West Ham fans. West Ham fans were going to buy tickets, and traditionally at Upton Park, it was 34,000, and then there were 24,000 season ticket holders. For you to say to a club, we want you to double that, and that's what's happened. We've got 62,500 in the London Stadium, and this health and safety planning application is there to turn that into 66,000. That's an important thing, and it's really something that it's a bit naughty for the pundits to leave that out when they're saying, what more do you want? Because we're in a much bigger stadium. Not only are we in a bigger stadium, there's certain advantages, financial advantages with that stadium, which are probably make us the envy of some clubs, particularly in financial fair play. Not for the stadium itself, because it's too far from the pitch, but in terms of us not having these massive operating costs, I think in terms of financial fair play, it's probably a bit of a help. However, what is important is if you're going to ask basically 30-odd thousand more fans to turn up, you've got to give them reason for doing so, and I just don't think that the football does that. I think if you're in European football and you're playing exciting football, then I think you'll get it in there. I think if you're going to go out of Europe and you're just going to concede lots of goals and not score many, then you're just not going to do it. You naturally you will revert back to the size of fan base that you had. You're going to lose to tourists, and there are a lot of tourists. Got asked, particularly at the start, to go to that stadium, and to be fair, to a certain extent, they've sorted it out. There are. Listen, I'm not saying day trippers is any bad thing. You actually do need some of that, but I think they did a better job of sort of filtering them out of, where maybe some of the core fan base was in the stadium. But you've got to give people a reason to turn up, and that's the final thing. I don't think David Moyes does give people a reason to turn up. And so I think for all the things, I think the football's finally ground to a halt. I think the squad needs complete redevelopment. I think possibly there'll be some envious glances at looking at what Leverkusen have done, particularly bearing in mind we managed to get one of their members of staff who probably knows how. Even if he didn't do all that project himself at Leverkusen, he knows how it was done. And then you've got the financial implications of the club looking at it, thinking, well, we're not sure that this manager can A, fill our stadium up, or B, sign players without losing a lot of money. And I think there's going to be some concern there as well. So, look, I may be completely wrong, but for that reason, I do actually think that David Moyes is off. I think he's got the look of a dead man walking.